In this video, we are saying goodbye to they, them pronouns. I'm going to tell you exactly why in just a second. But to start this video off, I'm going to blow your minds with something absolutely ridiculous. Kindergarten kids are being offered non-binary gender pronouns by the education department in one Aussie state. In this video, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to show you exactly why people are no longer identifying as they, thems. But before we get into that, and on the topic, in the state of Queensland, in Australia, are being offered non-binary gender pronouns. We are talking about 4 to 5-year-olds being offered non-binary pronouns. Parents in Queensland were asked if they would like they, them pronouns used for their preschool age child in official paperwork. So this is even younger than that. This is 3 to 4-year-olds. Each November, kindergarten teachers in the state prepare what is called a transition statement for children age 4 and 5 going into primary school the next year. That's a big moment for a lot of kids. They're about to take that next step into big school, and you really got to get your pronouns sorted before you start big school. You don't want to open up a Vegemite sandwich at lunch and forget your fucking cock, do you? I don't know what that means, but you know what I mean. The document outlines the child's academic and artistic strengths, or areas they might need to focus on more. Yes, you should focus on your gender more as a 4-year-old. The report is then given to parents, and if they choose, to the primary school where the child will attend. So it's all about providing information for the teachers and the parents. I get it. But under the gender section, this is where everyone had the issue. That's where parents could choose whether or not they would like their child referred to as he, him, she, her, or they, them. Now, you may be forgiven for thinking that, none of these kids actually chose they, them. None of the parents actually did that. It was just there because it was part of the report software, a part of the click down menu. It's just there. No, 46 parents across the state had nominated they, them pronouns for their child this year. 46, let's call it a round number, 50 kids aged 4 to 5 are choosing non-gender specific pronouns. I've got a lot of questions for those parents. My first question would be, were you involved in this decision? In fact, how involved were you in the decision of your child being non-binary? I would very much like to know that. And do you have blue hair? I do think that some kids are just born in the wrong body, but is it 50 every single year in one state of Australia? There's not that many kids going to school there. But maybe all of this is coming to an end because we are seeing downtrending numbers when it comes to people who are identifying as non-binary, meaning back in the early 2020s, there was a lot more who were putting their hand up saying, I'm a they, them. And now people are just like, no, that ain't me. Now, this story was reported on by Vice, which is very, very interesting because they, over the last decade, have continually proven themselves as extremely, for lack of a better term, woke, to the point where people make fun of them for how left-leaning, how woke, how progressive they are. Ladies and gentlemen, before we go any further, this video is brought to you by the great people at Crush Organics. Crush Organics is the world's leading supplier of high-grade CBD products to keep you calm, focused, relaxed, calm, cool, and collected. I have been sponsored by Crush Organics for a very long time, and I very much appreciate them and everything they do. These people are decent human beings, and that's what I really like about them. With an amazing collection of oils that include the Peppermint Day Oil, Carver Infused Night Oil, Broad Spectrum Muscle Recovery Oils, the Platinum Oils, and the all-new Maximum Impact Diamond Oil, they are a brand that has something for everyone. I love the pain cream. It's fantastic, particularly for me being a tall human being. My back's crook. Terrible, awful. I thoroughly enjoy that. And ladies and gentlemen, they've got a massive sale on right now. If you use the code ISAAC-VIP, spelled exactly like this, you will get 50% off. Yes, that's right. These are huge Black Friday sales, ladies and gentlemen. They are coming to you right now. Go and support Crush Organics, and let's get back into the video. But here's the story. Kids aren't identifying as non-binary anymore. For a while, it felt like every college classroom came with the pronoun check-ins and name tags that doubled as identity statements. It sounds like they're being a bit mean here, old Vice. They then went mainstream fast. Now, new data shows fewer students are using the non-binary label, suggesting that the conversation around gender may be changing again. Ooh, scary. I think we should probably, at this point of the video, work out what the fuck we're talking about. like what is non-binary, what is gender non-conforming. People who are non-binary may choose one of these pronouns or labels. They may be non-binary, they may be gender fluid, they may be agender, they may be genderqueer, they may be another 52 different options, okay? I know I haven't narrowed it down or explained it all, but no one really knows what any of this means. Now, I asked ChatGPT, I said, what does actually happen to you when you feel you are non-binary? What are the symptoms of being non-binary? And I'm about to provide you with ChatGPT's answer. I hope it's very, very politically correct. ChatGPT said there are no symptoms because this is not an illness or disorder. I choose not to respond to that at all. I have nothing to say. But this all comes from a new report from political scientist Eric Kaufman, who suggests that fewer Gen Z students are identifying outside the male-female binary, the idea that you can either be a man or a woman or a boy or a girl. That ridiculous idea. Gen Z's actually doing something that doesn't make them huge pieces of shit for once. That's unbelievable. Now, back in 2020, there was a survey done by the Trevor Project that found that 25% of LGBTQIA plus youth identified as non-binary. Now, in other parts of the world, it's closer to 7%. In fact, the Kaufman study that we're talking about here found that at Brown University, 2.6% of students identified as non-binary in 2025, half the percentage that was recorded in 2020 and 2023. Andover, the number dropped from 7.5 to 3% in just 2 years. We are talking about continual drops. Statistics that go across the board of halving the numbers of non-binary people and students across these universities. These numbers are dwindling. If you looked at anything else, if you looked at a stock and saw a stock halve over the last 5 years, you probably would make a pretty fair bet that that stock is not going to be around too much longer. So, let's have a good fucking think here, ladies and gentlemen, and ask the most important question in this video. Why? Why do you think it's happened? Let me ask you that. Let me know in the comment section down below. I have my theories. The internet has their own theories and the media has their own theories, and that usually is, blaming bigots and blaming white people and white straight men, all that type of shit, the usual suspects. But I think that the truth may well be not overly pleasant for those who believe in the woke principle. Perhaps it's because it's not as edgy as it once was. A lot of people suggest that the rise in transgender people was a lot like the goth era. A lot of people were doing it because it was the edgy thing to do. And now, because it's not edgy anymore, people who are in that age bracket are just like, I don't want to do that anymore. That's what all the old people do. So maybe they're turning away from it. Maybe it's not as punk rock as it once was. That may not make any sense to you or I, but we must remember we're talking about teenagers here. Some before puberty and some after. And they are all These kids want to rebel, and this is just not rebellious anymore. I mean, I guess it's still a little bit rebellious to tell your parents who love you more than anything in the world and have spent all this money on you and looking after you and all this type of shit for the last 10, 15, 20, 25 years that you're fucking omnigender. That's pretty rebellious. That would make me as a father just go, you what? I think what's actually happening here is we are developing an immunity. Yeah. What do I mean by that? Well, think about it like this. It is a social contagion, a feeling, an identity that's spread through words, through videos, through text, through podcasts, through books. And when it grows in the minds of the most impressionable amongst us. And it doesn't stop at 1, it doesn't stop at 2, it keeps growing and going and looking for people to, for lack of a better term, infect if you go with this way of thinking. Now, what doesn't help is people are scared to talk about this contagion. Now, I'm not taking away the fact that some people are born intersex, some people are born in the wrong bodies, but I'm just saying the numbers are so vastly high, or they were, that it makes me think that something else was going on. I may be wrong, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, but that is my general feeling here. And in a world where all we're talking about is feelings, you better listen to mine. I do feel that the Gen Zs out there, though, are building an immunity to all of this shit. They're not allowing it to become a part of them. They're seeing what the ones who are older than them did and what they went through, and they were like, no, not for me. And now they're not allowing that social contagion to take over. They're doing something crazy by saying, hey, let's just go back to being boys and girls. And if you are trans, just pick one. I think that's the general consensus. In psychology, a social contagion refers to behaviors and emotions or beliefs spreading through a social influence, like trends, slang, or attitudes catching on within, peer groups, like vaping or even smoking back in the day. So we must ask ourselves this very difficult question. Are people becoming non-binary, or were they becoming non-binary because that's how they actually are or were? Or is it because they were being socially rewarded for doing so? Putting that flag in your bio on Instagram immediately gets you some brownie points within your community. These are all very unpopular questions to ask, but in a free society, we should be able to ask them. And you should be able to, if you disagree with me, argue back. I think what these halving of numbers actually are just us reverting to the actual numbers of trans and non-binary people. We saw such a ballooning number of people who feel this way, or are this way, over the past 5-10 years, that this is just a way of self-correcting, perhaps. And it's these numbers, the 2%, the 2.5%, the 3%, that have been the numbers that have been stable for 5 decades, 3 decades, 4 decades, 5 decades. Over the past few decades, at the very least, that's where they've been sitting. And then all of a sudden, we saw this huge rise. I probably shouldn't do that on camera. Editor Connor, blur everything I just did out. I found, the end of this article from Vice to be very profound. They said, maybe the real story isn't decline, but it's recalibration. After years of expanding definitions, some Gen Zers seem ready to move past identity politics and focus on simply being themselves. Now, I don't know exactly what the writer meant or the author meant when they wrote that, but here's what I take away from that. We can only hope that we as a people, slowly but surely, forget about all this gender, skin color, where you're from, your sexuality, what version of ADHD, how many autism points you have. Just forget about that shit and focus on just you. Stop worrying about all this outside fucking noise. Stop playing the victim and live your life. Ladies and gentlemen and the remaining non-binaries, let me know in the comment section down below what you thought about this video. Be a good motherfucker. Peace in the Middle East. Be dick stinks. Toodaloo au revoir. Bye-bye.